I think everybody here knows how I feel about Barack Obama, or maybe how I did feel about Barack Obama. Right. Have I changed my mind? Do I feel a little differently, etc.? Well, the president has left the Middle East, and there's no question that he made some impression.
He most certainly did.
People like myself and others, we had our complaints about what went on in the first term, the relationship between the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of the United States. We spoke about it on this radio show. I spoke up about it on national television. That relationship was strained. It was not a healthy thing for Israel. It was not a healthy thing for the United States. And you know something, Dov? To prove how right I was, we were actually so right. Everybody denies it. The government, the White House always says, no, we have a great relationship. Everything is fine. Everything is wonderful. We get along very well. The proof of the fact that it wasn't so great and it wasn't so wonderful is the fact that he made the trip, and the fact that every commentator, every reporter, every story that has appeared talks about the contrast, talks about how different this was. And again, all we can judge right now, and ever really, we judge the words that come out of a person's mouth, in this case the President of the United States, and of course we watch the actions. Words mean a lot, and of course actions mean even more. And it's so clear that this trip was different. It's so clear that the President of the United States had a couple of very clear goals. One of them was clearly to create a different relationship with the Prime Minister of Israel. And we know that relationship was strained. That was not a good relationship. Going back to the visit of Netanyahu to the White House, where he was treated literally disrespectfully. But everything changed. You could just see from the gestures, whether it was the president putting his arm around the prime minister, everything was different this time. Now, some people might say, well, the president, when he made the speech to the university students, that he spoke about a two-state solution. If you want to start nitpicking every little word, for those people who want to be critical, at least for now, I'm not saying, again, let me be very, very clear. Was this trip a good trip for all concerned, be it Israel, be it the United States?
Most definitely.
Absolutely. There's no question. Does this mean that we now have a friend in the White House? There's nothing to be concerned about. There's not going to be any pressure, et cetera, et cetera. That we'll wait and see. Right. Exactly. No, but the president did a great job. He deserves credit. He said all the right things. And one of the most important things, let's get this very, very clear. It's something I spoke about so often. When the President of the United States, during his first term, made it a fundamental principle that there almost cannot be any negotiations with the Palestinians unless construction of settlements. And when we say construction, we don't mean developing new settlements. But if someone lives in a house, Dov, and their family is growing, they now have 2 or 3 more children, they need to expand, they need to have another toilet, in the house. According to the position of the United States government during the first term of Barack Obama, any construction anywhere, not only in Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank, but in Jerusalem, in East Jerusalem, violated things. That was an obstacle to peace. That was a terrible thing. Any construction. In other words, you can't, and by the way, I have a little Rahmanis on Mahmoud Abbas.
He was in a bad position.
A little bit of Rahmanis. I'll tell you why. Because it was the President of the United States during his first term who set this new concept of no construction. What did Abbas do? If the President of the United States says it, then he has to say it, and he did. Right. And he did. So therefore, by the way, Prime Minister Netanyahu during his last term, I remember that. I had just left Israel at that time, announced a freeze for 10 months. For 10 months, there was a freeze of construction in the settlements. And by the way, no one remembers that, Dov. No one cares, but it was an unbelievable thing. By the way, no other prime minister has ever done that before. What this Likud prime minister did during his first term, 10 months of no construction, and he antagonized all the people who supported him, but he did it anyway. And during that 10 months, There was no negotiation. There was no discussion because somebody was building something in East Jerusalem. It was absolutely insane. So Mahmoud Abbas refused to sit down with the Prime Minister of Israel until you say no construction, any construction, period.
And now
that really changed. Right. I mean, there is no question. Everyone is reporting that. The President of the United States...
I think he realizes that it was unrealistic to go in, and I think that he made that as one of his first goals through the Mideast crisis to try to stop that, and really it backfired tremendously.
So, and you know what? You got to give him credit for looking at a policy, sitting with his people, because this was all planned out, ladies and gentlemen. This did not happen that the President just said something. This was all planned out way before his plane landed in Tel Aviv. All this was planned out. What the President was going to say, what he was... Can I tell you? I guarantee you, even his gesture, even giving him a hug, even putting his arm around him, even saying...
Every word, every sentence was
carefully
vetted.
I got to tell you, the President of the United States now can compete with John Liu in terms of Hebrew. Because John Liu, our controller, he's a good friend, he's running for mayor, always uses Hebrew. When he comes to our communities, I mean, he keeps on picking up new words. Well, I got to tell you, John Liu better sit down and start studying some more, because the President of the United States, there's a whole list, I think it was in the New York Times, other places, a whole list of Hebrew phrases that, and I'm not talking about shalom, and I'm not talking about Hava Nagila, I'm talking about phrases that he used constantly when he spoke to the public at the different opportunities, when he spoke to the students, when he spoke. I mean, the guy literally really prepared his Hebrew phrases to make people feel a lot better.
That's funny. You mentioned that he wanted to repair the rift between him and Bibi Netanyahu, but I think he also, one of his most important missions, and he accomplished this, I believe, is to reassure the Israeli public of his commitment to them. And if you remember, I think his polls
I was just going to say that.
About 10%.
Right before he came, they were reporting from Israel polls that were taken literally before he arrived. Again, there were different polls, but many of them showed clearly that the people of Israel, a cross-section of the people of Israel, did not feel he was a friend. One poll that got a lot of attention, 10% of the people of Israel. Mm-hmm. By the way, that is almost unheard of. Almost unheard of. I mean, Clinton was popular, Bush was popular, and so on. But 10% of the people of Israel thought he was a friend. By the way, if there's going to be peace talks, and by the way, I cannot imagine peace with the characters you have right now with Mahmoud Abbas. Look, 40% of the Palestinians who live in Gaza under Hamas, forget it. As far as they're concerned, the state of Israel should not exist anywhere, period. So nothing is going to happen, but do you have to make the efforts? Absolutely. Do you need to sit and talk? Absolutely. No question about that. But this is really major change. And if the people of Israel don't feel that the President of the United States is someone that you can trust, then how can you deal with issues like peace? How can you deal with issues like Iran? Now, somebody asked me, what do I think changed with Barack Obama? Now, let's get this very, very clear. Barack Obama does not have to run for anything ever again. He will not run for anything ever again. He didn't have to sort of prepare for the next election where he is, going to have to go back to the voters and face Jewish voters as well. It's over. He doesn't have to run for re-election. He can do and say anything. He will be the president for the next 4 years. So what prompted him to do this? I think one of the things is that the fact that the Middle East of 2013, the Middle East that we are living with right now, is a different Middle East from 4 years ago.
Vastly different.
I mean, 4 years ago, Assad was totally in control in Syria. Mubarak was totally in control in Egypt, and everything was much more. It was a different world. The Arab Spring,
Syria
had not hit yet.
4 years ago,
right? I'm saying Syria, Assad was totally. There was no Arab Spring. What's going on in Yemen? What's going on in Lebanon? What's going on in so many other places in the Middle East? Things are very different now. You have the Muslim Brotherhood. Let's face it. in spite of the fact that we've just sent over $250 million additional to Morsi, the leader of Egypt, who represents the Muslim Brotherhood, plus we've sent them some jets, advanced jets. The fact is the Muslim Brotherhood, and we know what they represent, they are in charge. They are in charge. The Middle East right now is very different. The situation with Iran. God forbid Iran develops a nuclear weapon. Yes, Israel is in danger, but so is the United States. So are the European countries. So things are very different, and I think that the president and his advisors clearly recognize that. And, there's one stable country in the Middle East, let's face it. Israel is not perfect, but there's one democracy in the Middle East. I mean, we talk about all the countries. How about Jordan? President visited Jordan. Jordan is very unstable. You could wake up tomorrow morning and find out that Abdullah is not the king of Jordan anymore.
Well, they have other problems.
Because they have serious problems.
They have 300,000 refugees from Syria.
More than half the population is Palestinian, not Jordanian, Palestinian. Problems everywhere. There's one place that is really stable, there's no question, and that is a real friend of the United States through thick and thin, and that is Israel. So I think that was part of it. I think that was a major piece of it. One of the other very positive developments, we did say we're going to try to take phone calls, right?
Right, we did say that.
So let's give out the number. Okay. I just want to say a few other things.
Okay, let me give the number out. It's 347-985-1080. Again, 347-985-1080. We'll be looking for your phone calls. We'll try to take them.
This issue, if you want to tell us, look, my tone about Barack Obama right now, I judge things on what I see. It has nothing to do with politics. I'm not a Democrat. Well, I'm a Democrat, but, my loyalty is to our community. My loyalty is to America. My loyalty is not to a particular party. When Barack Obama is a problem, I'm going to speak about it. When Barack Obama does well, and he did very well in the Middle East just now, then we're going to say it. Let me say one of the other things, and again, we want to take your calls and get your opinions, and 347-985-1080, 347-985-1080. One of the other very important things that happened that was very different from the Cairo University speech that the president made 4 years ago was that when he spoke at Cairo University, he alluded to the fact that the state of Israel was basically a creation related to the Holocaust. There was a Holocaust and everybody had Rahmanis on the Jewish people. He never spoke about the historical connection of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. Right. It's like none of the history of the last couple of thousand years existed. He spoke about the Holocaust. That was very insulting, very hurtful to people. And now, Dov, and everyone out there, it was totally different. He literally, throughout the many speeches that he made, spoke about the connection of the Jewish people to the land of Israel, made it very clear in great detail through so many of the things that he did. For instance, going to the museum.
I was just going to say, the
Dead
Sea Scrolls, right? He went to the museum to see them. That wasn't written after the Holocaust. That was there for a long, long time.
Precisely. So on so many different levels, settlement construction, the Jewish roots to Israel rather than just the Holocaust.
And even Iran. I think he mentioned many, many times that Israel has the right.
He reiterated that the policy of the United States is not containment. Let me explain that. Because some people say that America is not going to take any action. Our policy is really to contain Iran. It's sort of like what existed between the United States and the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union existed. You have your nuclear weapons, we have our nuclear weapons. You try to contain it, control it. The president made it clear again and again. Right, Dov? That the policy, all options are on the table, right. And that the policy of the United States is not containment. So I got to tell you, on so many different levels, we shall see what happens, Dov, in the coming weeks and months. Is there going to be pressure eventually? if you ask me, Dov, do I think it's, we don't have to worry about anything, Dov. It's all going to be, we're in for a wonderful ride. That does not happen too often. But, I'd love to be surprised. I'd love to become an overnight fan of Barack Obama. And, again, I repeat, he did very, very well. And one final thing I want to bring up that happened, maybe we can get your opinion on this as well. And again, we're taking your calls at 347-985-1080, is Prime Minister Netanyahu apologizing to Turkey, something the Israeli government said they would never do. This is for the incident that happened a couple of years ago in 2010 when the Israelis boarded the ship, the Turkish Gaza-bound ship, it's called Mavi Marmara. A number of people were killed on the ship. They attacked Israeli soldiers. The Prime Minister, I think Barack Obama had something to do, not pressuring Netanyahu to do it.
He nudged him.
The Prime Minister made a decision to do it, and guess what? Now they have reestablished diplomatic relations, right. But the former Foreign Minister, Lieberman, called, and I'm reading the Times of Israel tomorrow's headline, Lieberman calls Turkey apology a serious mistake. Right. We want to get your opinion at 347-985-1080.
Right, and joining us on the phone is David from Manhattan. David, your thought or comment?
Yeah, hi, Shavua Tov, and happy Pesach. I hope you're right, but I have serious reservations if you're right. And I just wanted to say a few things very quickly. First of all, our so-called peace partner, Abu Mazen, this week or last week, he honored among a number of former terrorists, one of whom was Hajj Amin al-Husseini, and I'm sure you know who he was, the Mufti of Jerusalem, who had a pact, met personally with Hitler, and urged Hitler to kill more Jews. And he honors him as a hero and a martyr. And this is a so-called peace partner. To me, it's beyond absurd. That's number one. Number two, as far as Mr. Obama is concerned, I hope you're right, but I have serious doubts if you're correct. Look at the people he's appointing. Chuck Hagel, Senator Kerry, Brennan. I mean, this is not a policy of appointing people who are friendly to Israel. And I don't know how to explain it. I mean, this is not ancient history that he appointed these people.
David, I agree with you on those appointments. Hagel, of course, is the obvious one, but Kerry is not far behind. But the point is, I made it very, very clear. I'm judging him now on this trip to Israel. I'm not judging him on what's going to happen tomorrow. On this trip to Israel, did he say the things that needed to be said? Has the policy of the United States changed in terms of the settlement issue? This is probably the number one issue in Israel. At the end of the day, the Prime Minister ended up winning on that issue. So I agree with you. And by the way, there is no partner for peace. Do you have to sit? Do you have to talk? Do you have to have the conversations? There will be no peace. There will be, look, the Israeli governments prior, as you know, David, they've tried to make peace, and they've tried to make the most ridiculous concessions. And at the end of the day, whether it was Arafat or whether it was Abu Mazen with Ehud Olmert, I mean, they said no, and they were being offered a deal that they will never be offered again. So, David, I agree with you, but as far as the future is concerned, I think that only time will tell whether the United States policy, look, I would be shocked. It's not going to be rosy forever. With the best presidents, best friends of Israel, the very fact is that there were issues with Clinton. There were issues with Reagan. There were issues with Bush. The President of the United States is not the Prime Minister of Israel. Policies will not always be identical. So, David, thank you for your analysis. I appreciate it. And look, we're going to all watch and see what happens. We'll go to our next caller.
We have another caller, David from Borough Park. David, you're on the air.
Yes, I want to say the right reason is just one thing. The live Malachim is Sarmi Al Hashem. That's it.
Could not agree with you more. No question about it. But we look at things and we see how they are, and we make judgments. Thank you very much for your phone call. I'm very curious to know how people feel about this. I think, by the way, that the Prime Minister of Israel making that phone call to the leader of Istanbul, to Turkey, I think that's a good thing. Okay, I have absolutely no problem with it. It's easy to criticize that, but and does that mean, by the way, that Turkey is going to be Israel's friend? Just watch. The first time Israel does something that Turkey doesn't agree with, let's remember, the people running Turkey today are the Islamists. They're the ones in control of Turkey, just like in Egypt. And as soon as Israel does something that they don't like, trust me, we're going to be back to where we were. Yeah. But for now, Israel, needs to do certain things, and I don't think Israel paid, a price. It isn't like Israel had to do something that was
They did agree to compensate the
okay,
victims, yeah.
You know something?
But that will be made up in the trade between the two countries.
Right.
No, but this was very important also for the United States, because both Turkey and Israel obviously are very close allies, and to have this rift between them really affected the United States and how they can deal with the Middle East. And so it was very important to have this rapprochement.
So you might say it was a very interesting and a very good week, or good couple of days last week, and of course, only time will tell, in terms of how real this is. And the first David made a very, very good point. Look at some of the people appointed by the president.
Yes,
but for now, kudos to the president for a great job in the Middle East. Don't have to agree with him on everything he said during that speech, but he did a great job. Anyway, let me wish everyone out there